Hello everyone, and welcome to the Dice Commando YouTube channel. I'm Andrew, with you here as always. This is the Commando Cast, a video cast about all things Star Wars Destiny. This video and others like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. Please show your support with a like and subscribe, and be sure to hit the bell notification icon so you don't miss any new videos. If you want to get involved with the channel, consider becoming a channel member. There are many benefits to channel membership, including access to our Discord, exclusive deck tech and strategy videos, and the opportunity to help create channel content. I want to sincerely thank all our channel members, as I truly couldn't do this without your support. You guys rock. Go Commando.
Hello everyone, welcome to Dice Commando and the Commando Cast. I'm Andrew with you here as always, and today I'm talking about my top 5 thematic design choices in Star Wars Destiny that could have made for a very, very different game. Hello everyone, thanks for joining me again. Hope your week has been great. Mine was. I was able to get out and see some family, which is definitely a nice thing to do these days. So, like I said, today what I'm talking about are my top 5 design choices, thematic design choices in Star Wars Destiny that could have made for a very different game. And what I want to stress very, very much and very clearly here is that none of these are, I'm not saying that any of these were wrong. I'm not saying they were the wrong choices at all, right? What we need to remember, especially in an IP-paced game, right, especially one we're all passionate about like Star Wars, is that you, of course, as a designer have to make, you know, compromises between being thematic and actually being, you know, playable, right? So none of this is negative feedback towards any of the designers or anything like that, right? That's not what this is, right? This is instead me sitting down looking at the game, I'm like, well, that's odd, or I wish this had been different. Right, so for example, number 5 on my list is top 5 design choices that could have changed the game as we know it. Number 5 is Red 5 Luke, who's blue. Right, so there are obvious reasons why Red 5 Luke was blue. Right, no doubt there. That way you can put the blue abilities on him, right, which we'll talk about later. Right, but we do have a precedent for non-blue characters able to carry abilities like Ezra. Right, so we could have done that here. We could have made him red here and still have done that, right? So that's one of the things that that's why I find this one odd, is because we actually did have a precedent sent already with Ezra, and we didn't. And then the interesting fallout of him being blue was that his ship ended up being blue, which was admittedly a little odd. Like, I think most of us thought, you know, Red 5 would have been Luke Skywalker's X-Wing in this case, would have been red. And then the real fallout is, from a plot standpoint, is Destroy the Death Star was red, right? Which meant that, which it should have been, right? But because Luke is blue and is good with the plot, right, actually does the plot reduction and is very clearly intended to go with the plot, that means that you are, in most cases, right, aside from some 3-wide stuff that we've seen, you're really hamstrung into a red, I mean, because the plot's red, you have to play a red character with it, right? So you're very much hamstrung into your plot selections, right? So, you know, from that perspective, is Poe 2, the 2-player set Poe, not Legacy's Poe, sorry, 2-player set Poe, is he really the only option here? I mean, I think he really is. And then again, Poe only has the 2 damage sides, and you would really want somebody with like 3 damage sides for the plot, especially with Luke only being with 10 health. So that's kind of interesting, right? Because I was a little surprised they didn't release a logical partner for Luke. Now, granted, this is the last set in the block, so maybe there is a logical partner for Luke coming out, or that would have come out in Wild Horizons, whenever the heck we see that. Right, maybe there was a plan here, but this very much, I think, in terms of how it could have changed the game, right? I mean, we already talked about many of the constraint effects that have happened because of that, right? Having to play red character, DDS being red. You know, think about it, if Luke had been red, even with the ability thing being put on him, that would have opened up a lot more design space, and you know, we could have potentially seen DDS be like a real legit thing, right? So I find that to be a very interesting design choice. Next, number 4 is that there was no clone subtype, right? All of the clones, Rex, Cody, the actual clone trooper, They were all just given the trooper subtype, which makes sense. But can you imagine the design space? And this is one that I'm a little surprised from the design side they didn't do, right? Because can you imagine the design space it would have opened up to give the clone keyword, right? They could have had an additional 20 cards, well, 10 to 15 cards, whatever it may be, but those cards would have basically written themselves, right? And I mean, from a design standpoint, it would have maybe made it easier, right? So, you know, like I said, it would have been amazingly straightforward to do that. So it's a little surprising that they didn't. I do understand, having done some custom card design on my own, right? I think I know why they didn't do it, because you start running out of space on the card, right? Destiny, we have never seen a character in Destiny that has its keywords go onto a second line. And with Rex being a character, leader, trooper, if you were to go character, leader, trooper, clone, it really messes with the offset of that. So I think probably that was a design choice that they did just based on that constraint, but that's just my theory. But yeah, so I really think it would have been cool had they done that, because we could have seen like a real Fives, a real Echo, and so on, which now we've seen, but even those guys still don't have the clone keyword. So anyway, that's just my number 4, is that I was a little surprised we never saw a clone subtype. All right, my number 3 is, what it says here is villain bounty hunters, but what it really means is that everything we've seen in terms of bounty hunters has been primarily constrained to the villain side. And, you know, I found it very odd that, and granted, she came out in Across the Galaxy and most of the bounty hunters hit in Convergence, which was the tribal set, I get that. But we had seen the bounty hunter keyword already on Boba Fett way earlier. And Leia Organa was not a bounty hunter, which I thought was odd, because in this case, she's Boosh, so she's posing as Boosh, which means that she should have had the bounty hunter keyword, right? And then, but even on top of that, there's even kind of the sub question here of why were the bounty hunters not neutral, right? I mean, I get that the bounty hunters do evil, horrible things, but I mean, they would have worked for either side. So I think it could have been a very interesting design space choice to have a majority of bounty hunters be neutral people. And again, this may be one of those things where either it didn't work design-wise or Disney wants them to be villains, right? I mean, you know, you harken back to the old Decipher game, right? Boba Fett was a dark side guy, right? All of them were on the dark side and they weren't neutral, right? There wasn't like a light side version, right? Lando, there was a dark side and a light side version of Lando back in the day, and there wasn't for Boba Fett, right? So maybe that's a Lucasfilm / Disney decision that drove him into that, and that's completely fine. But even on top of that, even ignoring the character argument, if you go and you look at a lot of the bounties themselves, a lot of those bounties themselves are villain, right? DOA, Dead or Alive, is neutral, but a lot of the other just normal villain bounties, well, I just said it, a lot of the bounties are villain, right? And I think that could have had some pretty significant implications for gameplay, especially with Dead or Alive with Leia Boosh, right? I think she could have been very relevant, potentially into multiple sets, had a lot of those supporting cards even just supported her. And no, I'm not asking them to design a set specifically for one character that's not in that block, but thinking ahead, right, who I'm showing now, right, Mando, right? Mando coming out, like, he could be villain, or I mean, he could be a neutral, he could very easily be a hero, and I mean, they had to know at that point that something was coming, and by they, I mean Disney or whatever, whomever in the planning phase, they had to know that something was coming. I mean, we've known about Mandalorian now for the better part of 2 years, right? So that time frame would have lined up that they could have started pumping more neutral cards in there to support him, because presumably if the game would have kept going, we would have gotten a Mando card, right? So that's more where my head went, not just because of Leia Boosh, but also because of the future of bringing in stuff like that, which they did know at the time, not necessarily all the details about him, but they were aware of the existence of that coming in the future. So I think it was odd that those design choices were made. Right, so my number 2, this one, you guys know Rogue One, right there, right? Both of them right there, right? Rogue One's my favorite movie. It always bugged me that Cassian was yellow. I think he should have been red. I understand the angle on making him yellow because he's kind of, you know, he's an assassin. He's kind of like rogue-ish, I guess. I mean, he's not because he's rogue. But I don't understand why he wasn't red. And furthermore, I think he should have been a trooper. Both of those things I think would have had very different gameplay implications. And then on top of this, it kind of leads into the next thing of, I understand why, well, with Cassian being yellow, it makes sense that Jin was red so they could get the red-yellow, but they should have been flipped, right? Especially because the first Jin we saw was yellow. Like, that made sense. Like, if Cassian wasn't aligned with the military, then why the heck was Jin aligned with the military to be red, right? That's what I'm saying. So the whole Jin-Cassian thing should have been flipped. That never made sense. I think Cassian should have been a trooper. If they didn't want to make him a trooper because he's an assassin and all that, that's fine. But now let's go to the actual game effect side of that. Like, can you imagine how different this game would have been if we could have been measuring with Cassian, or all just the different design space that brought? I mean, the whole Yoda Leia or the whole Yoda Cassian Mill thing never would have happened probably because of not access to yellow, right? And then can you imagine the Yoda Jin mill deck that could have potentially been good if she was yellow and had access to all the easy picking stuff? Still wouldn't have been better than Yoda Leia. That's not what I'm saying, but there would have been a lot more options there, and I think it would have been really cool. And I really think Cassian probably should have been red. He definitely should have been red if Jin was red. I guess that's my argument. Again, I like that Jin Cassian was the yellow-red combo. I think that was brilliant design space. It just should have been the other way around. All right, last one. Top 5, well, number 1 of my odd thematic design choices is blue upgrades altogether. And there's kind of a sub-argument here in that a lot of the blue upgrades say blue character only, which makes perfect sense for the abilities of being force abilities, right? But it's especially dumb to put it on like Obi-Wan's lightsaber, for example, was blue character only. Like why, right? And if it was that way, why not on all the lightsabers? You know what I mean, right? So like it wasn't on Rey's lightsaber, which makes complete sense because we see Finn pick it up. But then a Jawa could in theory pick up Obi-Wan's lightsaber and wield it, right? So like I don't know why Obi-Wan's lightsaber was blue character only. It's not like you needed to turn it on with your force powers or something, right? Like you just flick a switch and chop somebody in half. So but at the same time, like I said, the blue ability upgrades not limited to force users is kind of weird, right? In that wouldn't it have just been easier in the design space to just make all blue abilities not being able to be, like, you could have almost like had some like sub rule within the game that blue abilities couldn't be attached to non-blue characters or something like that, right? And I know that's kind of weird to do the rule that way, but like now you're using up a good amount of text real estate on each card to say that they can't be put on somebody who's not a force user. And then like you kind of get into that weird space with like R2-D2. And like, again, it makes complete sense that R2-D2 can't like use the force, like makes complete sense. But then you have kind of that weird space where he can still give you access to blue, which in theory is still kind of like the force user faction identity. So I think this one is my number 1 because there's just a lot of weird things that happened as a result of this. Functionally, I don't think there were any real major problems. It was just kind of weird and kind of non-intuitive, especially when you saw, going back to Luke and Ezra, right? When you see things like, well, can equip blue abilities, like, well, yeah, but they still can't bring the blue abilities to the table, right? And so like, why can Ezra not bring blue but can equip it, but R2 can bring blue but not equip it, right? It was just a kind of a weird thing that really was there for the majority of the game. So anyway, those are just my top 5. Again, I just want to be clear, right? These are not complaints. I'm not saying that anything was wrong or that anything was broken because of this. That's not what I'm saying. It's just, I've gone back and thought about a lot of this. I'm like, now, how different would the game have been today if a lot of these decisions had been made differently? So that's just what I was thinking. Let me know what you're thinking as well. I'm sure a lot of people have other cards or examples that they can bring up that are kind of odd. And again, this is not an attacking thing. That's not where we're going here. But what did you think was odd throughout the life of Star Wars Destiny? Let me know in the comments. So, nothing else. Go Commando.